I've probably mentioned this before, but I do work with corporations and I run women in leadership programs. So this is a question that I've come up with today because I was thinking about what we talk about in our cohorts is who you are is how you lead. Now, this morning, I had a group mentor class, and perfectionism came up in how a coach was coaching and exploring that. But one of the things I shared is, why don't we think about who you are is how you coach? And I thought, isn't that interesting if we think about, and it connects with perfectionism, how do we show up in that space as coaches? What are your thoughts on that idea on who you are is how you coach?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think actually really powerful. So, I mean, there's a saying of like, we what is it? We practice what we preach, or we should be practicing what we preach. And I think that's a major, so there's so many layers to this. I'm trying to figure out what layer to hit, but I was just recently listening to somebody talking about busyness and rest, and how often we just go, and where are we taking time to build a relationship, or to John Mark Comer mentioned something about like building this architecture of our life. Like, who are we building for, and how are we building our daily habits to be able to build this life architecture, to become who we want to be, or who we believe we are to be, and all these things. And so I think it's really important for us to have this life architecture for ourselves, these daily habits and these things that we're leaning into, for us to be able to pour into others. We can't pour out what we don't get poured in. And so with this busyness thing, I was even thinking, like, if I'm in a go mode and I'm not taking any time for rest for myself, I'm just go. I'm not praying in the morning, I'm not reading, I'm not doing these things that I know that energize and give me life. Then when I come to a coaching session, I'm going to be a lot more frazzled, and I'm going to be, my mind and my energy is probably going to be fast paced like that too. And not that I can't have a busy day, but if I'm not centering myself, for me, with God or in prayer, or these things first and foremost to set off my day, then when I get busy, I don't have a centering place to come back to as quickly or as readily as I might if I'm taking time for rest incorporated into the busy. And so it makes me think of, like, that's a small little example, but that immediately came to mind, where I'm like, oh man, if I'm not practicing rest, I'm going to show up in a coaching session not restful and more quick. When I'm restful, I'm going to listen more carefully. I'm going to be probably slower to ask a question because I'm not feeling rushed, like we have to get this done or find an answer or that kind of thing. I keep snapping my fingers so much. I'm liking that. I don't know why. I don't ever snap my fingers. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts? And we can come back. That's a really, really profound thing.
I think it's really powerful what you just shared, and that's around intentionality, isn't it? How are we also intentional with ourselves, because that energy shows up in other interactions that we have, whether it's when you're a coach, or when you're with family or loved ones or a leader. All of those spaces, you're going to show up in that way, aren't you? And so thinking about our own self-awareness, emotional intelligence, our own daily practices. And then I'm also thinking about our own values and the things that motivate us. And we think about core motivation, not just the perfectionist, it might be the defender, the helper. I hear the helper a lot show up in coaching sessions when I'm assessing. And what I'm always curious about when I get to know a coach at the beginning of the assessment, I always like to ask you, what is your core motivation, and how does that show up for you when you're coaching? And sometimes people haven't thought about it. And then it's like, oh, actually, I'm a helper everywhere, and I was trying to help too much in the session. Or actually my values were showing up in how I thought the question should be answered, or we have an expectation of how we think the question that we asked should be answered, but that person's not us. And then some of the other things I think for us to really think about is what's showing up for you in a coaching session. So not like how did you do in that coaching session, but was there anything that triggered you? Or I think we have to, Zig Ziglar talks about the checkup from the neck up, and I think we've got to check ourselves in case we feel any biases or any judgments, because that's our map of the world, that's our lens of the world. And even though it's not about us, we are bringing ourselves into a session or any interaction with people.
Yeah, that's really good. I would just feel like I need a t-shirt that just says like, yeah, that's really good. When I'm talking to you, I'm just like, no, I love that. That is so important to check ourselves with that. Because we don't want to lead. We don't want to, we really want to empower the person in front of us to tap into what is within them and find those answers. And people are incredible. And a lot of times there's a lot going on in our minds and our hearts that we just haven't verbalized. And so being in a space to be able to pull that out is pretty remarkable. And I think a lot of times what we believe could be an answer is not actually the answer that is needed for somebody right now. I know I've been shocked multiple times in coaching sessions where I'm like, I did not expect us going there, and that was awesome.
Yes. Yeah, that real awareness, isn't it? Or sometimes I might hear, well, they didn't answer the question. Okay, well, they didn't answer the question, or didn't answer the question in terms of what your view or perspective was of how that should be answered. People process in different ways. I think when I think about coaches as well, and I love to ask the question at the beginning of group mentor classes, start to think about what is my brand as a coach? What is my style as a coach? And I think all of those elements, you can bring that in to who you are and how you coach. And I love listening to people who are very different to me as well, creatives, people who are really creative and ask super cool creative questions, because I can be more on the side of structure. Not that I can't do the structured improv or I enjoy it, but I do like to add that framework and be very clear when I'm talking about it. So I think it's enjoyable listening to different ways as well. What kind of style do you think you bring in, Ashley?
Wait, answer that first, Raj. Give me a second to think. How would you answer that? What's your style?
My style, and I talk about it when I design the alliance with a new client as well. I'll say, kind of, I'm going to hold you accountable. It's part of what the coaching is about. I will have talked at that point, this is what a coaching session is going to look like, and what coaching is and what coaching isn't, and we'll have talked about why now for them. And I love to learn about my clients in that design the alliance piece, because it helps me to meet them where they're at, and they can also ask me questions. And I'll say, sometimes we'll have one session like, let's see if we're a good fit. My style in how I'm coaching is I love to bring in humor. We're going to have a laugh and a joke around things as well. Often people cry a lot. That's okay. It's a safe space. There's a judgment-free space that I'm holding here. And I do share around accountability and direct communication. I talk about, imagine me walking alongside you and shine a torch on the things that might trip you up. Yet I might see things that are going to trip you up that you don't. So I'm going to call you out. That's who I am as a coach. How would you like me to call you out? So we create a partnership and that relationship, yet they also know that they are coming to me for that kind of brand of coaching. Or I'll joke with people and say, of course, this is a service you're paying for. Unless you want to pay me just, tell you things are all great, and people are like, no, they joke, and we laugh about it, and then we create that partnership. Is that helping to answer your question, Ashley?
Do you believe you answered the question? How do you...
Did I answer the question? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
I think you did too. You did a great job. No, that's wonderful. It's very similar in Design the Alliance call and covering all of those similar things. And I would say that my style is very much playful as well. Like, we're going to have some fun in a coaching session, but very similarly as well, it can get emotional. And I'm very comfortable with tears and going to the deep places, the places that feel uncomfortable. And so that is something that I'll talk about, is just pointed questions or going to those places where does a client feel comfortable leaning into that. And also a spiritual side, where how would they like that piece to be brought in? And in my specific coaching with women on self-worth and like autoimmune wellness, or we'll talk about if I'm working with a client who has an autoimmune diagnosis, there's very specific things we'll cover in that, because my style is not to create like a nutrition plan for them or things like that. It's to partner with them on their journey to autoimmune wellness and the rediscovery that is taking place for them in that journey of themselves, and to empower them in that. And so we talk about those kinds of things, which would be, very direct or very transparent about, that's not somewhere that I have expertise or work on. So here's where some good resources, or, those kinds of things too.
I love that. And yeah, so she tuned in when she said, did you answer that question? Because I was still thinking there was a piece that I didn't answer. So great catch, Coach Ashley. Yeah, I'm thinking about which piece didn't I answer around that question. And I think the important piece that I had not answered was around, for me, part of style and bringing in who I am is values as well. So I will maybe explore values or share values, and diversity inclusion in particular, or fairness and justice. I wear my Wonder Woman bracelet, so fairness and justice is really important. Yeah. So we look at that as well, and I like to bring in diversity and inclusion elements. And for me, the piece of that is meeting people where they're at. And to meet people where they're at is understanding them. What do you like to be referred to, or what are important things about diversity characteristics would be helpful for me to know. And sometimes people will share about faith, or they'll share about spirituality, or maybe it's a term that they're not comfortable with. Whatever it is, it helps me to step into somebody's world and meet them where they're at and adapt. So even though who I am is how I coach, I also change it up in terms of meeting people in different places. Even when I'm doing this Coaching to Flourish with John, it's probably different when I'm doing it with you, because we are meeting each other in different places, aren't we? Mm-hmm. And knowing that John's an optimist, and knowing that you and I have, perfectionist traits, you're going to relate to people in different ways. Mm-hmm. In that experience. And it also helps me, I can take a session spiritual and towards mindfulness, or I can take it very corporate, depending in terms of where that person's at.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time. We are out of time, so I don't know how that's happened.
Well, I think that's so, thank you for sharing that, Raj. And I think, a takeaway from that for those that are listening is take time to know your style, to figure out what is important to you as a coach, and to really consider what your Design the Alliance looks like with a client. Do not skip designing the alliance with a client. It is crucial foundation for the rest of your relationship with them. And to what you're speaking to, it's so important for us to walk alongside, to meet them where they are at. That is true life coaching. We're not coming in as the expert role. So being curious and getting to know our client before we even begin a coaching session is going to transform the entire process and relationship. And so lean in, ask those questions, figure out, we have the Design the Alliance handout for you all, but there's other questions that you can add. You can make it your own, kind of what Raj was speaking about right now. take some time to figure out what else you want to add to that, what you want to know about your clients, and what would allow you to show up without perfectionism and and more of a growth mindset and curiosity and all that kind of stuff. So, Raj, this has been so good.